TEC Sideline is presented by First Bank and Trust Company, the bank that puts you first. They can meet your banking and financing needs for personal, agricultural, business, commercial, mortgages, and so much more. Visit firstbank.com to learn more.
What's up, Hokie Nation? And welcome into episode 497 of the TEC Sideline podcast. Just under 3 weeks away from kickoff between Virginia Tech and VMI. Today we preview defensively for Virginia Tech and special teams as well. All that and much more coming up in episode 497 of the TEC Sideline podcast, which starts right now. And we record on Tuesday, August 18th, 2026 from the TEC Solutions studio in the Virginia Tech Corporate Research Center. Remember to like, subscribe, and refer the show to a friend. I'm your host, Carter Hill. To my left is our lead analyst and columnist, Chris Coleman. Across the way is our managing editor, Mr. David Cunningham. To his left is our senior staff writer, Mr. Andy Bitter. And Nick Brown, our director of media, is producing behind the scenes. Football. It is that time of year here in Blacksburg. Real fast, though. So Fan Day was on Sunday here at the Beamer Barn. Andy got to attend in person, and he got to sign an autograph. How did that feel, Andy? How did that feel?
A little strange. Franco wasn't signing autographs. He was just taking pictures. So a guy who was a fan of the pod and of TEC Sideline was like, hey, would you sign my football? I'm like, are you sure you want to devalue this football that much? So I found a spot in the very corner that didn't disrupt all the other signatures on there. So yeah, that was a first.
Yeah, very cool.
But yeah.
You didn't sign it Blacksburg Softball Rec League champ?
I should have. I didn't have enough room on the thing. But yeah, shout out to our softball team. But as always. But yeah, that was the first doing that at Fan Day.
Okay. All right. Well, so real fast before we really get into the nitty gritty too. So practice was on Thursday. Not sure if there's really any updates there. I believe you were there, Andy. You were there, Chris, as well. Or you were there on Thursday. You were out of town though, correct? So the two of you guys were there in person. Was there anything you guys took away from Thursday? And maybe even talking to Anthony Midget post practice as well.
You know, it's getting less and less at the practice. I think the first time we were there, it was like 8 periods.
Now we got four.
And it's usually like 3 periods of individual drills and then one sort of interesting one where they do one-on-one matchups. And it's like, that's where you just get to see the receivers against the defensive backs. And that's fun because they really get into it. I think probably defensive backs had the better day on the last one we saw. I think it's gone back and forth the first couple, but I think the DBs made more plays on this. And I don't know if that's bad throws or bad routes or just good play by the defense. But it's getting tougher and tougher to sort of get information out of those small sessions that we get. Because I think they're intentionally showing us less and less as the season gets closer. Got to keep it secret for VMI. You don't want to let too much out there.
It's the same stuff they showed us in the spring. And the only thing you can really say is, yeah, there's more arm talent in the quarterback room. There's only so many different ways you can say that, right? A couple more faces in the mix, like Xavier Cleveland's in there now, and he wasn't here in the spring. Same for Davion Brown, and those guys are impressive for true freshmen. But other than that, not a lot to add.
Well, even before we could see, like occasionally they would run out, like the offense would run down the field against air, but it would be all 11 people on offense.
Right.
And now we're not even seeing that portion. So it gets, we're going to talk about depth chart the next couple of days here and the lineups they might try out there. It's really tough now to glean what they're doing and figure it out because they just don't show it to us.
The one thing I'll add that Gabe Williams wasn't out there. He wasn't out there the practice on media day, and he wasn't out there this past week either, so he's dealing with some kind of injury.
He wasn't Fan Day either.
Right. So yeah, he's dealing with some sort of injury.
Sometimes if those guys have like an obvious injury that they don't want people to know about, that they might not just have them show up. Like the guys that have been on scooters before have not shown up at Fan Day. So I don't know if that's the case with Gabe, but I would not count on him anytime soon. Certainly not for the opener.
Was Johnny Garrett at Fan Day?
I'll be honest, I did not check out the offensive line.
I would guess if Gabe wasn't there, then Garrett.
I was too busy at the defensive back stand brought to you by Crumble Cookies.
Yeah,
I like how they were sponsoring the different autograph.
So who were the sponsors for some of the other
positions? I did not go around and take them all. I just saw the defensive backs and Crumble Cookies, which I don't know if you want to associate crumbling with the defensive backs necessarily. I don't know if you want to associate it with anyone.
No.
The money is good, whatever it is, and it's just another sign that they're selling every aspect of that and trying to create revenue.
I was going to say on Gabe Williams, that's another tough blow for a guy that since he's arrived has just been dealing with a number of setbacks. I mean, he's a really, really good person. Having the chance to talk to him.
but he probably should have redshirted and played a little early and then gets injured, and then everything happens with his dad and just the process of him getting back to be healthy. And right when it seemed like maybe he'd be healthy and be able to help a linebacker room that seems like positions are there for the taking, gets hurt again.
I thought it was weird. During media day, Pry said Gabe's in a position to help us this year, and then 2 hours later, we're out there at practice, and Gabe's not even there and hasn't been there since because he's hurt.
Which is weird because normally Pry can't keep that secret.
Right.
Normally he just tells you exactly. He'll go through the defensive tackles and he won't mention Emmett Laws. And you'll be like, well, what's going on with Emmett Laws? It's like, well, we need some good things to happen there. Like he gives up the information, it feels like.
Well, great segue. Speaking of Brent Pry, it has been talked about ad nauseum, him coming back to be Virginia Tech's defensive coordinator. And we've talked about that for 9-10 months. But, on a serious note, look, he's going to be very, very involved with what Virginia Tech wants to do. Obviously, he is the defensive coordinator. But from what you guys have gathered so far and what I have gathered watching videos online and reading you guys' stuff on TechSideline.com is it seems like Brent Pry is fit seamlessly back into that new role, and maybe it is a role that is much more fit for him to be here at Virginia Tech going forward, obviously.
Yeah, he was always obviously a well-liked member of the program, even if his head coaching tenure didn't go as well as we all hoped it would. I think just being a coordinator now, I think there were times he had trouble balancing the whole good cop, bad cop thing as a head coach, and I think that's easier as a coordinator because you can just always lean back on, well, go ask Coach Franklin, right? He's the ultimate decision maker here. So yeah, I think it's just a role he's more comfortable in, and I think everybody around him can sense it.
Well, what is that theory? The Peter principle, that you rise to the level of your incompetence. And, he rose up to a head coach, and it was obviously he wasn't head coach material, but he was a great defensive coordinator for the longest time. So, when people are like, I don't know how this is going to work, I think it can, because I think he's a good coordinator. I think he works well with Franklin. I will be interested. The fans have been extremely positive about him, and their opinion of a head coach turned as quickly as I've seen somebody as they became an ex-head coach at a school. Usually there's a ton of resentment. Go look at the comments on our Justin Fuente podcast just to see how that went. It flipped almost immediately with Pry. And, he had a nice farewell message to the fans. Obviously put in a good word with Franklin during the hiring process, was very supportive throughout the whole thing, talking about it, I'm still a Hokies fan and stuff. There's no resentment there as he left. That's all fine and good in the offseason. If some team hangs 45 on him this year, I will be curious to see the fans' reaction to this is a great experiment. I love it. It's working perfect. It's like, well, you better get that defense right. I don't want to see somebody scoring that many points against us. And I think with some of the offenses they face, Miami, I think there's a possibility that could happen.
It's imperative that it work out with Pry at defensive coordinator, because nobody wants to have to fire that guy twice. Right?
That would be rough.
That would be rough. It's rough in any situation. Well, not that it's ever happened before, but it would be rough in any situation. But he's such a nice guy and such a well-liked guy that it really, really, really needs to work.
It'll be interesting checking the fan sentiment, like at the end of the season, come December. Like how are fans feeling about Pry as defensive coordinator? Because Chris, as you've talked about, the Hokies should be improved this year, but 2027 and 2028 should be the big steps forward, and they should get more talented next year and the year after that. But I'm curious, like how, going down to SMU, you're going to play some really good offenses this year, what that's going to do to even just the discourse on social media around it. And Pry has some big questions, like as far as the defense goes. I think we all feel pretty good about the cornerback room, but you look at defensive tackle, defensive end, linebacker, safety, the other four positions, there are a lot of questions. Not that they can't figure them out, because when you've got a guy like Kamari Copeland, that obviously helps everything, but they're going to have to figure out which guys can step up and make an impact. And, after September, it's really going to get real, and that ACC schedule is going to be really brutal. Some of these offenses, some of these quarterbacks they're playing, JKS from Cal, we haven't seen anything about Alberto Mendoza yet from Georgia Tech, but like these guys are talented. Darian Mensah, Kevin Jennings, like, even Bo Prabula from UVA at the end of the year. Like, this defense is going to have to come together and mesh, and it's kind of hard for us to tell where they are right now. When we get to the beginning of September and actually see them playing other people, I think it'll be a little bit more obvious.
Let's get to the defensive line a little bit. Now, I'll split this up between ends and tackles. And we talked about this a little bit on the podcast last week. Kamari Copeland, definitely the headliner when it comes to that group. And then Elijah Fall is somebody that Brent Pry has talked about too. But beyond that, especially if there's an injury, who else in that unit do you think can step up for Virginia Tech in 2026?
Oh, I loathe how Tech does their roster because they just list everybody as a defensive lineman. So, right now, it kind of seems like Eric Mensah, Randy Adarica are in your two deep, and Gerard Johnson III has a chance to be in there. One thing I've noticed, and this will be in an article later today, as far as it'll be my weights update article, is that in the spring you had Kamari Copeland and Elijah Fall. They were both a lot smaller than Mensah and Adarica, and since then Copeland and Fall have put on weight, and they had Mensah and Adarica drop weight. So now everybody in that top four is kind of between 305 and 311 pounds, and they all kind of look and play the same to a certain extent. So I think they've tightened up that group a little bit. And as a result, I think the coaching staff feels better about the defensive tackles than they did in the spring. Pry was talking in the spring like, we need some of these backups to come on, don't really feel great about the depth right now. And on media day, he'd kind of changed his tune.
Yeah, I think you have to remember in the spring when we talked to him, it was shortly after Emmett Laws has gotten hurt.
Yeah.
So I think Laws was a big part of their plans. I don't know necessarily if he would have started over Fall. I think he might have. I don't know exactly the positions.
He would have been top three.
Yeah, it would have been in that rotation. So all of a sudden you're losing a piece like that, not knowing if he'll be back this year. And, that's concerning at a spot where, I say this a lot, but there's not a lot of 300-pound humans on campus. They're just large human beings. If you have an injury at receiver or something like that, if you had to move a running back out there, it wouldn't be the end of the world. But you can't move a running back to defensive tackle. It's just not going to work. Maybe Bill Davis. I don't know. You're kind of close there. But I think that's a spot where you're going to need depth, and it's a spot where you inevitably have injuries because guys get knocked around all the time on the inside, and somebody falls on your knee from the wrong side, and there's nothing really you can do to protect yourself from that. So I will say we talked to Elijah Fall at Fan Day briefly. He seems eager to be back at a spot that sort of fits him more. That was, what he's done in the past. And I think, him as an end last year was not necessarily like an end. He was like a rush end or something like that. But this is more on the interior what he's used to. And he said one player to watch out for is Randy Adarica. He mentioned him specifically and just does things well on the inside. And he's a big guy and tough to move off of there and there. So, straight from one of the players' mouths there. Listen to the man.
Well, I think, Fall and Copeland, Pry talked about this, and we mentioned this, I think, last week, that the defensive scheme they used last year did not necessarily suit the skill sets of Copeland and Fall.
And the offensive scheme didn't fit the offensive personnel. My God.
So that's so weird to me in hindsight that they just admit that. It's like, well, yeah, the scheme didn't really fit our personnel. It's like, you were the head coach.
Right, yeah,
you had agency over this. You could have told them what to run. You don't just have to hire somebody and say, well, your system is what we're running. Like, you have control over that. Right. It was a mess. Maybe there's a reason why they went 3-9 last year.
Yeah. Well, with Copeland, I mean, he had a pretty good year to begin with. I'm curious, like, how much better he can be in a system that really refines his and allows him to go with his skill set. I think Fall moving inside is good. Adarica and Mensah, I mean, they're both highly recruited guys. One comes from Penn State, the other comes from Ohio State. And I think there's a lot of hope and promise about those guys, but they just haven't played a ton of football. And like at some point, we're going to talk a lot about this as we go through the defense. Like, you've got a lot of guys who seems like they've got the skills and they've got the tools and they were highly recruited. You got to go actually gain experience and play football at some point.
Yeah, Adarica I'm really high on. Redshirt freshman from the Miami area. I thought, he was a really good signing for Penn State and thus a really good signing for Virginia Tech. So I'm not surprised to see him in the 2 deep. Ultimately, it's just a question of how often Virginia Tech plays that 5th defensive tackle, which I would guess would be Gerard Johnson right now. Do they go with, they're going to play a lot of defensive tackles against VMI, obviously.
Yeah, I think VMI is a pretty good testing ground for them to see who you got. And then somebody like, Andrew Hanchuk's been here a couple of years. He's been hurt most of his time here. I talked about him for a while. Can he produce? Can he get on the field and contribute? Will be something to see.
I think Deron Richardson it'll be interesting to see if he plays against VMI.
Yeah, I think he will. I think that game, if Virginia Tech takes care of business, is going to be an absolute rout.
Well, I think VMI is like, that's where you see the new redshirt rule in effect.
Exactly.
It's like normally you're like, do we have to save these guys for the end of the year for the 4 games late in case you need them? And now it's just like, no, just play them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a game, assuming everything goes to plan, that you'll be able to get everybody in the game, I think.
Yep. Hey, what's Kamari's ceiling this year? Like at the end of the year, if everything goes perfectly for Kamari Copeland, like where's he going from an NFL draft standpoint? What type of year can he have?
I'm not an NFL scout or anything, but I think he's a guy who he'll test very well at the NBA Combine, and I think he'll be productive this year. Maybe you'd like to have a little more width and overall size, but not necessarily, because there's some darn good defensive tackles in the NFL these days that, by traditional metrics, are undersized, and I think it's good to get back to that in the NFL, where you have a little more variety amongst players at certain positions. But I think he's an NFL player. Yes.
Can you name the most recent defensive tackles, all ACC selections for Virginia Tech?
Yeah, the most recent
was
Peebles.
Peebles was the most recent one,
right?
And he's on the Ravens roster.
Mm-hmm.
Jared Hewitt, third team in 2020. Ricky Walker, second team, 2018. Tim Settle, 2017, second team. And then Woody Barron was a first team. So Peebles and Barron are the 2 first teamers that they've had in the last decade. And I think Copeland has that ceiling. Mm-hmm. I think he's a guy that can be a first team all ACC.
Preseason.
He was on the preseason team. I think a lot of it is, what do they have around him? So I think a lot of times defensive tackles especially get credit for the defensive line being good as a unit, because you're not going to go out there and make like 15 tackles for a loss or sacks as a defensive tackle, unless you're Aaron Donald or something like that, just wrecking shop from the interior like that. Typically, it's tougher to stack up numbers like that, and you'll be rewarded for being on a really good defensive line or defense. But, I think Copeland has that possibility to get up there.
He had 7.5 tackles for loss last year in a system that supposedly didn't fit him. So can he have double-digit tackles for loss this year in a system that does fit him?
Yeah, and you think that a lot of the talent around him is better. That should help, because imagine how many times he's getting double teamed, and he's the focal point of that defense. From the offensive line perspective of a game plan, it's like we've got to worry about where Kamari Copeland is at all times, and this is where you transition to defensive end. It's like you need a guy like Ace and Stevens, some of those guys to step up and wreak havoc a little bit.
Yeah, and from a selfish standpoint, media wise, I hope he has a great year, so he talks to us a lot.
Yeah,
he's a great interview.
Well, you mentioned defensive end, and Ace and Stevens gets a lot of the attention because of Brent Pry and James Franklin, what they put out there. But beyond that, Javian Hilson, Cortez Harris, Samuel Okunlola, Jason Abbey, Derek Dandy, and Malachi Williams are also guys that can contribute to that unit in 2026.
Sounds like Malachi Williams is the other starter right now, although, you might be able to consider Derek Dandy, who's been a solid run stopper, kind of a co-starter. Okunlola is a guy you're just waiting for to step up because he's got starting experience. He had that one season at Maryland, or was it Pitt? Yeah, Pitt, where he had 5 sacks. So he has more sacks than the rest of the defensive ends combined, but he got hurt last year for Colorado, missed the season, and then was out for the spring. So how severe was that injury? How quickly can he kick the rust off and things like that? There's bodies in there. I think it's funny, like you look at these guys' sizes. Okunlola is 6'3", 252. Abbey, 6'3", 256. Dandy, 6'2", 253. Williams, 6'3", 253. Cortez Harris, 6'2", 253. Like, this strength staff and this nutrition staff is on point. And Franklin has very high standards for guys keeping it the right weight, the right body fat percentage, and all that. And you can kind of see that amongst that group of defensive ends. Javion Hilson, 6'3", 250. Stevens is the biggest guy of the group, and he's definitely going to start, it seems like. But after that, we're just waiting to see how the depth shakes out. I'll tell you what, the only thing I heard about this past weekend scrimmage is that the offensive line really struggled against the defensive line, and that could be because the offensive line still has a lot of work to do, which we should have expected, or it could be because of that the defensive line is slightly ahead of where we thought they were going to be, or some combination of both.
It's interesting because, I looked at defensive ends. I'm like, well, who's going to step up in that group? And then you talk to the coaches in the spring, and they're like, we're actually not concerned about defensive end. And it's interesting because you think about it, you'd have fans, I think, and writers like us would have the least concerns when there's somebody like APR, who's like double-digit sack guy. You're going to get that every time. I think coaches looking at more from a depth standpoint. How many guys can you run in there? And talking to Sean Spencer at Media Day, he's like, I'm going to play a lot of guys. There's going to be like 6, 7, 8 guys that I'm going to rotate in there all the time. So, we talk about starters and, Stevens, Malachi Williams sounds like it might be the starting duo there.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's just a designation because I think those guys are going to get a lot of snaps, cycling a lot of players in, a lot of combinations. I think Jason Abbey will be in there, Okunlola. You mentioned Cortez Harris. Javion Hilson, I think, has some of the most impressive physical attributes,
the highest ceiling
on that
guys.
Defensive line. I think if you're just building a guy in a lab, that's kind of what you want him to look like. But he hasn't played yet. He's gotten on the field. So you have a lot of options there, and I think they're going to roll through those guys quite a bit. And it might be a season where I don't know if you have somebody who has more than 5 sacks.
Yeah, by committee it might be. Now, if you look at that group, you've got a redshirt senior, 2 redshirt juniors, and everybody else is a redshirt sophomore or younger. Like the rest of this Virginia Tech football team, the defensive ends are built for 2027 and 2028.
Yeah, and rolling so many guys, I think it will be difficult to break Ben Bell's record for roughing the passer penalties set last year, which is like, it's out there. I think it's going to be like a DiMaggio hitting
Tough one
streak
against
type.
Cal, though.
Nobody's going to come close to this thing.
That's funny.
The Cal one was
Tough one
brutal.
against Cal.
That was a bad call. Some other ones less bad calls.
Yeah.
He was ferocious, went after the quarterback, and they might need to check his hearing because I don't know if he always heard the whistle sometimes when he went after those guys.
Pry said last week that Stevens, Williams, Harris, and Abbey were his top 4. But then, basically, you throw Okunlola, Dandy, and Hilson into the mix, and that's your group. I don't know that anybody below that, any of the other redshirt freshmen or true freshmen, are probably breaking in there. But it seems like there's some good talent in the room. Just, again, Carter, a lot of question marks about, none of these guys have really put up numbers before. But if the coaching staff feels pretty good because of what they've seen in both the spring and the fall, I think that accounts for something.
I think it's the same as at a bunch of other positions. Like at wide receiver, you've got a bunch of guys, young guys, competing for the 4th and 5th spots. Same thing at defensive tackle. Same thing at defensive end. Competition has been kind of the name of the game since the beginning of spring ball, and you're seeing that play out in real time in these camp position battles, and defensive ends one of the examples.
Just because they haven't put up numbers yet doesn't mean they won't put up numbers.
Sure.
Yeah. And I think you go back a couple of years, who hadn't really put up numbers in his career? APR.
That's right.
Then he has 20 sacks in a couple seasons, more than that. If the talent is there and the development is there, when the opportunity arises, these guys can produce.
All right, and with that, let's step aside and hear from TEC Solutions on break number 1 here on episode 497 of the TEC Sideline podcast.
This TEC Sideline video comes to you from the TEC Solutions studio. TEC Solutions, located in Arlington, Virginia, provides specialized CETA engineering and financial advisory services to the Department of Defense and Intelligence community. Based on the philosophy of only hiring the best of the best, we pride ourselves on being customer and mission focused. A Washington Post top workplace winner in 2024 and 2025, we're always looking for talented and motivated individuals to join our team. Visit techsolutionsva.com/careers to learn more. That is TEC Solutions VA.com/careers.
And welcome back to episode 497 of the TEC Sideline podcast. Let's roll on defensively for Brent Pry, James Franklin, and Virginia Tech. We'll go to linebackers, Chris. What are our thoughts here? Caleb Spencer, Noah Chambers, Keon Wiley, Curtis Jones, George Balance, and Antoine Santiago, I should say, really round out that group.
Yeah, and Santiago's been hurt, and Gabe has been hurt. So they're dealing with a little bit of a short room right now. And Pry says they're cross-training everybody except for Noah Chambers, so it's kind of hard to get a grasp
Maybe
on it.
cross-training.
Right. Or maybe because
not.
Keon Wiley's like, that's not completely accurate. Whatever. But I think right now your if the season started tomorrow, your starting group would be Noah Chambers at Mike, Keon Wiley at wheel, and Caleb Spencer at that star or Sam or whatever they're calling it now position. And for you old school Tech fans, the will position is like the backer, the short side linebacker, and the star Sam position is like the whip, which is the wide side linebacker. And I think George Balance is a guy who's working in the two deep at both Mike and Will. I think they've moved Curtis Jones Jr. inside to Will a lot, just from a number standpoint, and they're actually working a couple of safeties that aren't listed right now. They're working them.
Sherrod Koval.
Yeah, Sherrod Koval at that outside linebacker role, and it wouldn't shock me if they were working Jordan Bass there too, because I think both of those guys struggle in coverage, and they're much better going forward and attacking the line of scrimmage. So I think the depth still has a little bit of shaking out to do, but I think I know who the starters are going to be at this point.
Yeah, I think this is one of my biggest concerns on the defense. Depth-wise, certainly. You lose a couple guys like Williams, and Santiago didn't really play last year, but he's at least a veteran in that room. I'm with you. I think I feel somewhat comfortable with the first team of Chambers, Spencer, and Wiley. It gets a little dicey once you get to the backups. And again, how often you get through a season with perfect health at a position. Even talking to Pry at media day, it's like, we kind of wish we had another guy there. When you hear that, you're like, well, they didn't quite hit what they wanted to in the transfer portal, or the injuries have put them in a bind now that they don't have quite what they want in terms of depth. So, we talk about starters all the time, but I think depth is just as critical, especially on defense where you can rotate a lot of guys in. So that's a problem spot, I think, for them. But I think, if Chambers continues to come along, if Spencer, has a season like he did last year, and the way they're talking about him could potentially have this year. And I think even a lot of Penn State fans have been like, oh, you're going to like Wiley. He's going to be pretty good. Yeah. I think there's a potential for that first unit to be pretty decent this year and maybe even above average. But again, it comes down to depth.
Well, I think this is the biggest question as far as prize questions go, in part because he's coaching the linebackers. And that was a position that they felt like under Pry they got a third or 2/3 of it right, but never got all three positions right. Like they had Keontae Jenkins there. He was a really good player, but they never really got the inside part right. Or I thought when you go all the way back to 2022, like Dax Hollifield, that was one of his better years,
his best year,
but the other positions were a little bit off. So, I like Andy said, I think Spencer, he's staying at the same position for another year. He bounced around very early in his career, and Chambers had flashes last year as a true freshman. I think you feel really good about those guys. And Price talked about Wiley, a guy he recruited originally to Penn State. Yeah. But after that, somebody's got to step up and make plays. I think Curtis Jones, he's a guy with a versatile background from West Virginia. I think he's probably the next guy up, but it's one of those where at some point these guys are going to be in the fire. They're going to be attacked, and they're going to have to step up and make plays.
What I do like about this group is right now their two starting inside linebackers are natural inside linebackers. Keon Wiley and Noah Chambers are natural inside linebackers. And Caleb Spencer got a lot of experience at the Mike position last year. He's playing in the outside role this year, which as a former safety at Miami and a former star at Virginia Tech, that might be his best position. So I think they've got it more in tune with how I like to play linebackers. I think your inside linebackers should be inside linebackers. You know, none of this, oh, he's never played on the inside before, so let's just throw him in there. It's a car crash in there, man. You got to have your head on a swivel, and there are just very few humans that can do that. So I think it's very important to recruit natural inside linebackers. And you've got Balance in there who can play Mike and Will, who's a natural inside linebacker. Jones, I'm guessing his head is spinning because he's always been an outside linebacker. And in fact, at West Virginia, you know, he was like an edge guy and also a running back, which was kind of weird. So he's a good athlete, but you know, what position is he? I do wish they had Gabe. Like I would be playing Gabe at that outside role 100% of the time. I think Wiggins, JPO, and Lama. Well, I was about to say they would redshirt, but clearly they're not going to redshirt. But Wiggins is a guy to keep an eye on because when he was recruited, he was 200 pounds. He was 213 when he enrolled in January. Now he's 226. So he's done a great job in the strength and conditioning program. I think they're playing him a lot at that outside role, and I think that's probably what fits his skill set best right now. But I don't know if I see any of those true freshmen involved this year, especially early in the year. Now, a guy like Wiggins, you give it 6 games or so, more practice time and things like that. Maybe he sneaks sneaks in there a little bit. But the guys I am kind of more interested in is who's your other backup outside linebacker? Could it be Jordan Bass or Sherrod Koval? Jordan Bass, when he was at Pitt, he was a 230-pound linebacker. And then he lost 30 pounds and tried to play safety last year for Virginia Tech. Actually, the original plan was to redshirt him so he could learn safety. So when he had to play, it was a disaster. I don't know, it's not really his fault. It's just coverage isn't his strength. He was a linebacker at Pitt, and a lot of times even like an inside type linebacker. So he never should have had to play safety. I think playing him in that outside linebacker role would be the best move for his skill set. So I'm going to be interested the next time we see practice on Friday if we can get a glimpse at the linebackers and see what position he's playing. Is he playing outside linebacker? Is he still at safety? I think they might be working him both a little bit right now, but I think for his skill set, it wouldn't surprise me if that outside linebacker spot was the best role for him. Koval as well.
It's interesting to me that they've had linebacker coaches as coordinators and head coach. I mean, Brent Pry is a linebackers guy. Chris Marv was a linebacker. Sam Siefkes, I think, was a linebackers guy. And they just have never really been able to figure out that position.
Well, they have 2 massive failures at recruiting in the Pry era. One of them starts for UVA right now, and he was the guy I wanted.
Cam Robinson?
Oh, yeah.
He's a dude.
They lost
He's
that
really
recruiting
good.
battle head-to-head with UVA at the time when UVA was bad, but Brent Pry was considered the linebacker guru, right? So still looking back, give UVA credit. They out-recruited Tech on that. And the other guy was the huge mistake, who's at Penn State right now, the linebacker, and I've forgotten his name, but he went to UNC.
Tony something.
Rojas?
No.
Oh, I thought
the
that's what you're
better
talking
one.
about.
He's way better than Rojas.
Oh, the one that went to
Okay.
Carolina and is
and
now
is now at Penn State.
Okay,
yeah.
He looked that up for me, David. I'm embarrassed that I forgot his
No,
name.
I
I'm
know
getting old.
exactly what you're talking about.
But he was a great player at Carolina. He's a great player for Penn State. Tech didn't offer him because they thought he was undersized.
Amari Campbell.
Yet they offered the 180-pound linebacker from Appomattox. That was a massive failure by Virginia
and
Tech.
Copeland.
Yeah, right. So the Virginia Tech's 2 starting linebackers right now, as far as I'm concerned, if they've been good enough recruiting over the last 4 years, it should be those 2 guys. That should be their starting inside linebackers, but massive recruiting failures. And you know, hopefully that changes going forward.
Well, it feels like they've been trying to catch up with that. And like just, some of the guys just haven't quite reached the ceiling or the hope that you would, like Caleb Woodson never quite got there.
Again, he was an outside linebacker in high
last
school.
season got off to a bad start, obviously, and he never really corrected himself from that. Now he's in Alabama. I haven't even checked out to see anywhere
I have no
close
idea.
to the starting rotation there. Jaden Keller, safety in high school. Kelly Lawson, receiver in high school. Another
And defensive
spots.
end. Yeah.
Do you know I like doing this. Do you know the last linebacker at Virginia Tech to make an all ACC team? Like one of the teams, not an honorable mention.
Did Dax never made it?
Dax was 2-time honorable mention.
Oh, shoot. Man, that's a great question.
His nickname is a chess piece.
Nick?
Rayshard Ashby.
Really?
You're
What's
kidding.
his nickname?
A rook.
Oh, that's right.
Rook.
That's
Interesting.
I mean, that's not why they call him that,
Yeah,
not
yeah.
because of the chess piece, but he was a second-team pick in 2019, which was bogus because he should have been a first-team pick that year because he won linebacker of the week like five times. And they gave it to the Surratt guy at North Carolina.
Who was actually great pass rusher, but horrible against the run.
That was one of the more egregious snubs in all ACC voting that I can remember from a Virginia Tech perspective. Because that year and the next year, Ashby was not good. He was out of shape and in the COVID year, and it just did not go well. But that 2019 season, he was a ball magnet. He was on tackling everybody. Just had a nose for sniffing out plays and getting in the backfield and making plays. But interestingly, that was also Bud Foster's last season, right? 2019, and these linebackers just haven't been the same since then. Imagine that, losing a Hall of Fame defensive coordinator, and his position isn't quite the same after that.
Right, and all those guys you just mentioned, like the Kellers and the Kelly Lawsons, and even like the Jaden McDonald when he was playing linebacker at Virginia Tech. What do they have in common? None of them played linebacker in high school. They were all outside guys, edge guys, or even in McDonald's case was like a cornerback, right? The two guys I mentioned, the two guys I wanted, the two guys that are actually awesome college football players were inside linebackers, and one of those Tech didn't even recruit, and the other one they lost the recruiting battle to. So it's just one of those was bad recruiting, the other was bad philosophy. So I want to see Virginia Tech's philosophy change over time when it comes to linebacker recruiting.
I think they need to run the linebacker recruits past Chris before
Exactly.
That's how it needs to work.
No.
So they got
the kid they got this year out of Florida who will sign
Amari Irvin.
Yeah,
I was about to bring him up.
He actually reminds me a lot of Amari Campbell. He's undersized.
He's 6'220".
Right. This is a guy, like, if you just look at his size, when Pry was head coach, they were only interested in offering linebackers that were like 6'3" or taller. They were just looked at size. This guy can play football. He reminds me of Amari Campbell quite a bit. 6 foot, 220, just a tremendous football player. I'm very excited about him.
They've also got Tyson Washington, the kid from St. James School.
Right, and he's an outside type.
He's 6'3", 205.
Right, you're right, and he'll play the outside linebacker.
I think they need to find more Tremaine Edmonds types.
That'd be nice.
The 6'5", 250, can run like a safety. Just find more of those guys. You'll be okay.
Yeah, just a regular
I'm a recruiting expert.
Just a regular old 3-star recruit from Dan River High School, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure there's plenty of those guys down there.
I'm
free tip, coaches. Find the next Tremaine Edmonds.
Then you'll be good to go. Yeah.
I'm curious. They feel so strongly about the corner room that when you play maybe IBM as the nickel, how do you shuffle around the linebackers and like you move Spencer inside and take one of the inside guys off the field? Like how exactly they go about it to get their best defensive backs on the field?
I think that would probably be what they do. I think because Pry has said, look, I think Starr might be his best position, as far as Caleb Spencer goes, but at the same time, he brings us something unique in coverage if he's playing Mike. So if you bring in that nickel and against obvious passing situations, and you maybe slide Spencer inside to Mike, and Chambers comes off, or maybe goes to Will and Wiley comes off. I don't know, but maybe that's your best coverage package. So I think it's probably safe to say that Spencer's going to play multiple roles for Virginia Tech this year in some way, shape, or form.
But he's Tech's returning leading tackler, right? I mean,
his grade against the run last year was over an 80. He was a good run stopper for Tech last year as a Mike. But I think he can be really effective out there on that edge with the Coleman Memorial Bridge tattoo on his calf.
From Gloucester.
Gloucester's finest, man.
By the way, I know we're past this point. Caleb Woodson is projected to be the starting Mike at Alabama this year.
Interesting.
So we'll see if that happens. Cornerback-wise, I know, David, you alluded to it. Jacquez White, transfer from Troy. If he can stay healthy, will probably be the guy everybody wants to watch out for. But, Josh Clark is somebody that going into last year, I think Brent Pry said, I forget if he said like verbatim, but I think there was quite a bit of projection out there that he was going to be a starting cornerback before he tore his ACL. Then you also bring in Cam Chadwick from UConn, IBM returns, as does Thomas Williams and JoJo Krim. So, you mentioned linebackers, a question mark. I don't know if they stay healthy, if cornerback really is. That's a pretty loaded room for Virginia Tech.
I think so. The only question is like who starts across from Jacquez White, I think, and does his partially torn ACL hold up? right? We talked about that last week. That's still a
I wonder how
concern
much
for
of that
me.
got lost in translation. Like, is it actually torn or was it sprained? And
Yeah.
he's calling it to, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, he's out there and he's moving fine.
Yeah,
So
right now I'm optimistic. But I think one option is to start Isaiah Brown Murray on the outside, and then when you want to go to your nickel package, you slide him inside and then bring your third corner into the outside, or he's the full-time nickel, and then you start either like a Thomas Williams, a Cam Chadwick, or a Josh Clark at the other corner. But if IBM's a full-time nickel, then you're taking off one of your best pure football players for a lot of snaps.
Yeah.
Right. So I kind of think they're going to start the season with him as the other starting outside corner, but I don't know that for a fact.
Well, I think he proved last year that he can play out there
Yeah.
and play it well. So, they talk about nickel, and I still think your base defense is 3 linebackers, and you adjust based on personnel, and teams aren't going to roll out 4 wide all the time now. They're like, this isn't the heyday of the run and shoot here that you're doing it like that. So I think, yeah, you'll get nickel, but I still don't know that it'll be the majority of the time. If that's the case, you want to have IBM out there. And, we talk about Joshua Clark, and I don't know if he goes by Joshua or Josh. Josh sounds better. Josh Clark. High potential in him. He still hasn't really done it on a field yet. He's coming off an injury. I don't know if you want to throw that on him immediately. And again, against VMI, I don't think it matters. But, starting spot, IBM has been out there. He's done it for a while. I think that would make more sense. Him and White as the starters. Clark comes on in a 3 cornerback situation. And then, I don't rule out guys like Thomas Williams, Cam Chadwick, Kenny Wosley, who I think is playing a couple different positions in that secondary.
Chadwick's got like 1,400 career snaps.
Yeah.
I mean, we were pretty high on JoJo Krim after his initial spring here, his freshman year, and now he's kind of in the secondary conversation. That tells you how much they've improved the depth in that cornerback room. Where last year I think it was IBM and Thomas Williams, and then they were just praying that nobody sprained an ankle or anything because who else is gonna play in that group? Because you lose Lovett to the transfer portal. Clark was injured all year. Was he a safety?
was
Was he a
a
corner or
personnel
safety?
safety,
Trying to think who else.
The guy who came from Hawaii and is now back in
Caleb
Hawaii.
Brown.
He
Yeah.
got hurt. He got hurt early in the year.
And he wasn't.
He got burned against South. The long
He wasn't
South
a guy who
Carolina.
I think they
yeah.
were.
Anyway.
I think last year they were holding on for dear life
Yeah.
at cornerback, and I don't think that's the issue this year.
No.
And again, it comes back to depth. I keep mentioning it over and over. I think that's a very critical thing, and that's, I think that more than anything is where James Franklin has really impacted this roster so far.
And then this is the place where if this was Major League Baseball and you're coming up on the trade deadline, you're trading one or two of these guys for an offensive tackle or something like that.
Yeah, if a GM out there would be dumb enough to trade an offensive tackle for a quarterback, but yes.
Yeah, I think you look at the top of that list, and that's 6 guys that are older that you feel very comfortable about. But there's 4 guys there: Krim, Deloach, Polydor, and Cleveland that we've heard a lot of praise from this camp. And they're really, really young. I mean, 2 of them are true freshmen. That is 10 guys that you feel very strongly about in some combination. I think one of the last times we were out there was some combination of White, Clark, IBM, but then Thomas Williams has played a lot of snaps. Chadwick, you mentioned, has played a lot of snaps. Wosley has played a good bit of snaps. And I'm curious, between Krim, Deloach, Polydor, Cleveland, I don't expect the latter 2, they're true freshmen, to play, but it seems like the coaching staff is confident in those guys, which is a good problem to have. You might see them roll out 10 corners against VMI. I think this room went from as Andy just pointed out, one of the ones you're worrying about the most to oh man, good problem to have. We feel confident in just about any of these guys.
Thomas Williams started most of last season for Virginia Tech. He might be the 5th option at corner right now, which shows you how much their depth has improved. JoJo Krim got on the field for about 150 snaps last year, and he might be your 6th option right now. Deloach was a highly recruited guy. Polydor was really good in the spring. Like, if this was most past seasons for Virginia Tech, Polydor would be on the field, in my opinion. But there's going to be a couple unhappy campers at the end of the season in the cornerback room. But that's what you want.
Yeah. Yeah, I think where they are now, Krim, Deloach, Polydor, Cleveland, and those guys, you go back to last year and you're where they are now, and you're like, these guys are playing.
Yeah. And
some of these guys might barely see the field at all, and some of the veteran guys might barely see the field at all. Like, you can't play six corners.
Last year I remember talking to Derek Jones, Cheetah, and I'm like, you guys are playing JoJo Krim a lot late in the season. It's like, we got no choice.
Yeah.
I mean, have to. Just don't have the bodies for it.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is an ideal program though, man. Right now, with how the roster is set up, like, you don't want to run a bunch of young players out there year after year after year. If you do that, you're going to lose a lot of games year after year after year. You want experienced guys on the field. Now, if you recruit a 5-star talent and he proves to be better than the older guys, then by all means play him. But if you get in that situation where you have to throw a lot of true freshmen and even redshirt freshmen out there, it's not going to be a good situation for you if you have to do that every year.
I think the challenge now in roster building is to keep those guys happy.
Yeah.
Because if you're not playing, it's very easy to go into the portal and go somewhere else, and somebody's going to pay you money to go do that. Can you keep somebody happy to be in a program 2-3 years before they really start contributing at a massive level? It'll be interesting to see if they can do that with the budget that they have, with the personalities they have in that program. And Franklin has been able to do that. I think he's had pretty good retention at Penn State over the years. We'll see if he can continue to do that here at Virginia Tech.
He's very good at getting guys to buy in, or he's very good at identifying guys in the recruiting process whose personality matches his philosophies as a coach.
He's a convincing person.
He is.
Talk to him, be in the room with him for a little bit. And he's got that dynamic personality that you can understand why guys and people, coaches want to coach for him and players want to play for him.
Yeah. I think I mentioned this last week, Carter, but talked to Thomas Williams, and he just kind of described this room as a bunch of guys with different tendencies, very much like the Dorian Strong, Mansour Delane, Derek Canteen room, where you got 3 different guys that you felt really good about that could all tackle in space and were all good coverage corners, and you could leave them on islands and you felt confident. And he's like, we've got this, but like a bunch of guys, and everyone has their own unique style. And it is going to be really fun, I think, to see, like, come those first couple weeks of the season, what's the snap breakdown between all these guys? Who's playing where? And I think in a pinch, some of these guys could also slide to safety as well.
And what was the challenge of that group? Canteen wanted to start at cornerback, so
Right.
he went to Cincinnati to do it.
Oh, yeah.
Presumably got paid some good money to do it in the
And I
process.
think they played him
Get
at
a year
safety.
there, right?
Yeah,
Oh, that's right.
right,
They did.
right. But guys want the opportunity to get on the field and show what they can do at certain spots, and there's just a limited number of spots.
Yep.
Okay, and with that, let's hear from Anneliese Stewart. Yes, she's related, from Remax 8 in Blacksburg. You graduated from Virginia Tech years ago. You left Blacksburg and built a good life and a good career, but you've always dreamed about returning to the New River Valley. If you're ready for that life-changing move, ready to look for a home in Blacksburg or the surrounding area, contact Anneliese Stewart of Remax 8 in Blacksburg. Born and raised in the New River Valley, Anneliese has been a realtor since graduating from Virginia Tech in 2023. She knows the area and is ready to help you find a house that you can truly call home. You've waited long enough. It's time to come back home. Visit AnnelieseStewart.remax.com to get started on your journey back to your roots. And we just keep on rolling. Episode 497 of the TEC Sideline podcast. We are thrilled that you could join us wherever you may be tuning in across the Commonwealth of Virginia or anywhere worldwide on TechSideline.com. One more thing on Remax 8 in Blacksburg and Anneliese Stewart. We're going to toss the microphone over to our director of media, Mr. Nick Brown, because Anneliese was very helpful to him and his wife, Caroline, over the last couple months.
Yeah, we bought a house back in April 29th, over in Fairlawn, the little sliver between Pulaski and Radford that people forget about. And absolutely love it. And we couldn't have gotten it done without Anneliese. She showed us 2 houses, and the second one we just so happened to buy. So she was really great throughout the entire process. Can't recommend her enough. And also helps that she was one of my good friends in high school, and she helped me get this job. So very grateful for her and everything she's done for me. And you should check her out if you're looking for a house in the New River Valley.
She also sold my mom's house in Fair Lawn.
Did she really?
Yeah, did a great job.
I didn't realize your mom lived in Fair Lawn.
Well, she her and my dad had a second place when they came up to Tech games and some weekends.
Yeah,
and
makes
So
sense.
Nick, she's your real
sold.
estate and media agent, it sounds like, if she got to this job in a house.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Nice, nice. Okay, finally, the safeties as we move on defensively for Virginia Tech. You know, Quentin Reddish, somebody returning from injury. I believe he played in the first 2 games of the season last year before he went down, 3 games of the season last year before he went down, and didn't play the remainder of the year, but he comes back. We mentioned Kenny Wosley a little bit. He's listed as a cornerback. I put him as a safety here because he's been working out a little bit more there. And then the trio of Tyson Flowers, Jordan Bass, and Sheldon Robinson also come back too. So what are the vibes on the safeties group right now, Chris?
Very happy to get Reddish back. You know, he was playing well for Virginia Tech early last season. He didn't miss a single tackle in 3 games. Nobody completed a pass on him. They only attempted 1 pass against him, and that was intercepted. That was Diego Pavia. So he was
one of 4 on the year for the
something-
team.
yeah, right. So he was very good in his limited time last year, and then got hurt. So you know, losing him certainly had an impact on that secondary. So he's a definite starter, and I believe we'll have a good season for Tech. It's the other safety spot on the short side of the field that I'm a little more concerned about. Flowers he struggled in space last year, and looks like he struggled in space a little bit in the preseason to me this year. Robinson and Brennan Johnson are both, you know, they should be redshirt freshmen. They got thrown into the fire last year because of all the other mess that was going on at safety.
The Christian Ellis departed.
Again,
everything.
Again, though, doesn't matter.
Right.
They're just second-year
Correct,
players.
Right. But they're second-year players. And, you know, we already talked about Koval basically being an outside linebacker now. Bass, you know, maybe could be a guy who plays that outside linebacker role. The fact that they were originally planning Wosley to back up at nickel, that's what he played in the spring, and get on the field there. He's now seems like he's playing more safety, and I've heard that Xavion Cleveland is getting some reps at safety. I think they're a little bit concerned about their safety. They're concerned about their second starter as well as their depth. So they've got a lot of corners, so they're kind of looking at some of those corners and saying which one of these guys could play safety, and those are the guys they've landed on. He hasn't practiced the position as far as I know, but you know, Brent Pry was like, Jaquez White can play any position in the secondary and do a good job at it. So I think there are some options back there, but it's going to take the rest of the preseason probably to kind of figure that out. But I think the fact that you're seeing them try cornerbacks back there at safety shows you that they're concerned about the position, and so am I.
You start with Reddish, and it's easy to forget, like he was just sort of starting to take off. You know, end of his freshman year, he had the blocked kick return
Against
for a
Clemson.
touchdown against Clemson, which Virginia Tech was actually leading at halftime of that game, 7-0, right?
Was that the only touchdown Tech scored?
In the
Yeah,
first
I think
half.
it-
Yeah,
so
until
he's-
late in the game.
Oh,
yeah.
that's right.
They got like a garbage time touchdown with Slee and
But like,
somebody.
there's a 7-0 game at halftime.
Yeah,
but
Yeah.
The
Clemson
game
turned it
where
on.
they started drones and
Yeah.
tooting despite both of them being hurt.
Couldn't walk.
Well,
Yeah, that was
but
fun.
Reddish had that, and then he started in hometown Charlotte, started in the Duke's Mayo Bowl, so that was like a big deal down there, and then started last season off on a good note, but then he got hurt, so it just like it felt like he was just starting to take off, and it wasn't like one thing that injured him. We talked to him last week, and he's like, I've had shoulder problems for a long time. And it just deteriorated to the point where you had to get it taken care of. And he said Pearson Prelo, his coach, was the one that's like, you need to just get this taken care of and fixed, because it's not going to get better on its own, and it's just going to continue to hurt you on the field. And, you know, Reddish mentioned it, his snaps kept going down every week until he finally just bit the bullet and got it done. So he said his shoulder feels as good as it's ever been, and he has confidence in it. And he's like, it's just a completely different world when you lower your shoulder and you know that you can do something with it. And the first time that he did that and set the edge, he's like, all right, I'm back in this sense. So I think, you know, very high ceiling on him, and they've liked him for a couple of years, and this is the first chance he's going to have to really show it as a full-time starter here. The other spot, like we've mentioned, Tyson Flowers, like, I know he gets the worst matchups in practice every time. It's like, oh, Luke Reynolds just caught another one on him. It's like Luke Reynolds is going to do that to a lot of safeties this year's guys. So I feel bad for him that it's like, here's another clip of Tyson Flowers at practice. It's like, yeah, he's going against Luke Reynolds with nobody else on the field and no other help out there. It's going to be a tough matchup. So I don't know if I want to judge him necessarily just off of that, but I think just based off of last year, there are some concerns there about, is he going to be the guy that can hold up full time at that spot? Great team spokesman, great leader like that, but you also need to make plays on the field, and we'll see if he's the guy to do that.
I wonder, as far as, like we talked about, the scheme not necessarily fitting Copeland and Fall, guys like that. I wonder if it's similar for the back end for somebody like Flowers, where I think Flowers is one of the guys who committed last year in the portal before Safeties comes in. Like, he didn't know who the defensive coordinator is going to be, and Safeties is trying to run some 3-high safety stuff. And
3-high is probably better suited for him because you split the field into thirds as opposed to halves.
Did they even do any of that? I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm not
but
X's and O's guy. I didn't pay attention to that.
But it was a revolving door with Reddish going out and then Christian Ellis playing and then rolling out and all. Flowers was really the only consistent option back there. I just wonder, he missed a bunch of tackles, but with better coaching at safety, with more structure around him, if he can be better. I think Sheldon Robinson, like, we saw him in a couple of different games last year, flash and make some really good plays. Can he be a solid option behind him? Same thing with Brennan Johnson, although maybe not quite as much. But like Bass, they had to rely on Bass last year. And I think ideally he's a guy who you could put in there in doses. But I look at the back seven, basically linebacker, corner, safety, and it's going to be a puzzle that's going to be constantly changing depending on what they want to do. Like, they want to play nickel. Maybe, you're playing IBM at nickel and Clark and White at corner, and you're moving Spencer inside, and maybe you're playing Chadwick at safety or Wosley at safety. Like, it's going to be interesting how they move around these chess pieces depending on what they want to accomplish. And I think you'll see that impact the safety room as well, because they feel so strongly at corner.
I do like Brennan Johnson's nickname is Peanut.
Yeah.
Peanut and Q, if those are the guys back there.
Yeah.
Bigger concern in your mind on the defense, linebacker or safety?
Safety. I think
Safety.
safety, man, for me, it's coverage and tackling. Like, tackling is very important for a safety because he's the free hitter a lot. And while I'm concerned about linebacker depth with the injuries, I do think the 3 starters can be solid. Whereas at safety, I'm only confident in one of the 2 starters right now.
Yeah.
I wonder if Wosley can get into the conversation.
I think he
safety.
can. I hope he can. Because I do think he got a lot of experience on the field at Penn State last year, and Virginia Tech is so deep at corner. And if IBM's going to be your nickel guy, I think it's the best place for him to get on the field, and you're trying to get your top 11 out there.
It's like O-line, where we want to get our best 5 on the field. I kind of look at the secondary positions like I do the offensive line. And yeah, there's a difference between tackle and guard, but in a pinch, you could move those guys between those positions, and they could do it. And I think Wosley's one of those swing guys that could play, like an offensive lineman who can play tackle and guard. I think he's a guy who can play safety and cornerback. And if he's one of the best 5 that you have in the secondary, put him out there.
That initial depth chart that's going to be released on game week is going to be interesting, because you're going to look at 1 or 2 of those spots on the secondary and be like, oh, maybe I didn't see that coming, or, oh, I didn't know that guy was playing that position, right? I think there's just a lot of things that are still wide open back there.
Well, to your point, Andy, I want to ask a similar question. I had it in the script. I want to go position group by position group, and you guys rank it not rank it 1 to 5. I'm going to give you guys each position group, and I'm curious to see how you guys feel. And I'm going to give you a scale 1 to 5. 5 being the most confident, 1 being the least confident in each group. Does that make sense? I'm going to give you each position group, and then
we're basically ranking.
Well, you're not ranking. No. I'm essentially going to give you each position group, and if you're really confident in them, it's going to be a 5. If you're not so confident, it's going to be a 1.
Okay. So but we don't have to use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We 1 each. We can say this is a 3.
We could have just ranked the position group.
You can. Okay. You want to do that way?
That might be easier.
Okay.
Let's
all right,
rank them.
Let's rank. Okay, we can rank them. We can rank
there's
them.
5 position groups, right?
Okay.
1 to 5 in terms of most confidence to least confidence. I would go cornerbacks,
Yes.
defensive ends, defensive tackles, linebackers, safeties.
Okay.
Most confident is corner. Least confident is safeties.
Fill in the blanks.
I think it's weird, man.
It's tough to put tackles below ends because Kamari Copeland is the best player on this defense.
Right.
And
right.
yet
Yeah.
I have more concerns about the tackle depth than I would at defensive end.
Yeah.
Okay.
For me, I actually I don't know. I'm not. I could go either way on that one. I see more star power, like you said, with Kamari at defensive tackle. The ends are so young, though, and their most experienced end, we don't know if he's going to play because he's coming off injury. Like Akinlola, like he's not even gotten in the 2 deep yet. And I expected him to be like a starter until I realized how badly hurt he was last year.
This is one where I would, not knowing the roster as well as the coaches do, I sort of trust the coaches' instinct on this. And the way they've talked, they sound much more confident in the ends that they have than the tackles.
Right.
And they're always looking at it from I think they look at it as a worst case scenario.
If I knew,
like what happens if we suffer injuries at this spot?
right,
How screwed are we?
right.
And they're gonna like the depth at end better.
I actually think if you could tell me with 100% certainty that the starting linebackers would stay healthy, I would rank that group second. The second most confident.
But I think you factor in the depth, and it's probably the way Andy did it. End tackle.
Yeah, I agree
end
with
tackle.
that.
I don't
linebacker.
think you can just ever assume full health for an entire
Sure,
season.
yeah.
It's football.
Sometimes you get it, sometimes you don't.
large people running into each other,
Right.
80 times a game. You're going to have injuries.
All right, thinking about special teams real fast, if we're good on the defensive unit, I do want to talk about special teams for a little bit. And, we mentioned this a little bit on, what was that, Thursday, Friday, whenever we did that last podcast. But John Love is the place kicker. Cole Bird, the redshirt freshman from Bassett, would be the kickoff specialist right now, according to James Franklin going into the season. And then Nathan Totten, who you brought in from Marshall, who is a very sought-after guy in the portal, is right now going to be your punter, and I also believe your holder. So any thoughts on the special teams unit right now as a whole before we get to who maybe even is going to return punts and kicks here coming up in 2026?
You're just skipping over the long snapper altogether.
I'm sorry, yep.
Christian Epling, he's back.
Is it? They brought in Deed Capper as well.
Capper, great
Nothing
name.
can fracture a team like a long snapping controversy.
Right.
So, no, I think it's probably Epling is the top guy there as the senior.
I mean, Love has worked with Epling for so long now, but this will be the third different holder they've had. Like Epling, Peter Moore was one of those guys, Nick Velsistis last year, and now Totten. And Love says Totten's a really good holder. He said it. I believe it. And obviously, you feel really good about Love. They seem confident in Cole Bird. And then, Totten, we haven't heard a lot about him. Hopefully, Tuck doesn't have to punt as much as it has.
You don't see him very often,
has. But he's a guy who did it all at Marshall last
He
year.
was a second team
really
all-conference player, right?
Yeah.
So did he kick off at Marshall too? I forget. He did something.
I think he did.
Okay.
But he's got a kicking and punting background.
Right.
So like he can do it. I think they feel pretty confident about that group. If you're Cole Bird, it's booted out of the back of the end zone, please.
Yeah.
And Kyle Lowe did that so well last year.
Didn't they used to have Cole Bird listed as a punter on the roster?
I think
Now he just has a K next to his
think
name.
he's
Well, the others are listed as kickers.
Right.
So they've updated it to reflect that.
Yeah. So I feel good about that group.
I feel fine about them.
Yeah.
Like my bigger questions on special teams is like who is going to return kicks and punts.
Quayshawn Brown's probably the punt returner.
I would
assume.
think so.
I think he's an option there. I think Tyseer Denmark can be in that mix. Sounds like Davian Brown could be a punt return or a kick return option. Thomas Williams on kick return. I think they like his running back background. And that was always the thing with previous, the Stu Holds especially. They said on kickoffs, you're looking for more of a running back type that sees the crease and then finds the hole and then shoots through it. Punt return is more of a shifty guy that can make moves that way. Possibly Jeffrey Overton, somebody like that.
I'd love to see him as a kickoff returner.
Yeah, that'd be an interesting one. I wonder if you want to open him up to an injury risk there.
Yeah, that's
so
yeah.
if it's not him, could somebody like Messiah Mickens be in that situation? He's a running back that doesn't have as big of a role as those top two guys.
They've
I
used
think
Tyler
that could
Mason.
be an option. So I think they have options there. It'll be interesting to see who rises to the top and the guy they put out there.
Yeah, if you're looking for like a non-running back type, and I include Thomas Williams as a running back type because he played there in high school, then I think Davion Brown, his size, he's 6'1", 204. His straight ahead speed is really
Let's
good.
call him Fat Rat. Come on.
You're right.
We can't just let that go.
Yeah, you can't. Fat Rat.
So much cooler.
Yeah, he's a guy who I'd want to take a look at that.
Okay.
There's a kick returner.
I believe John Love is just a stat on John Love too, real fast. I think he's the second most accurate kicker in the ACC right now behind Georgia Tech's Aiden Burr. He was the one that hit that field goal against Clemson to beat them essentially as time expired. But Hokies are in a good spot there. But continue, David. Sorry.
Yeah, I think Fat Rat is a guy like who knows how the wide receiver room shakes out. He's obviously impressed and is pushing, but like if there's no redshirt rule anymore. You want to get him on the field. That punt return, kick return might be a great position where you can say, hey, we're going to go get him some reps. We trust him. It'll be an opportunity to get him on the field with the ball in his hands. And I mean, he's pretty electric. Like we've seen him make plays in practice so far. But obviously that stuff can change in an instant. Mason and Williams, both guys in the past who have worn 23, have both done kickoffs, last couple years. So you got some returning experience. Brown obviously was a punt returner at Duke. So you got options.
Not that I put a lot of stock in these preseason watch lists, but how does John Love not make the Groza watch list?
He didn't?
In the
No, he
preseason? Like, was the voting panel like purely Syracuse band members? Is this why there's some sort of like grudge that they're holding against? Like, I don't understand that. He should be in that group.
Dude's made a 60-yard field goal.
Yeah,
And he's accurate.
yeah, and he's been accurate over the years. I don't understand that one.
Yeah. That seems like that's just like an oversight.
Yeah.
Well, thankfully, watch lists don't mean anything.
They mean
so-
nothing.
They mean even less than they used to.
It used to be like, well, that's just an excuse to write a filler article for whatever, but now nobody bothers to do that anymore.
Yeah. I mean, Love's really good, man. And it's one of those things, cherish the really good kickers while you got them. I was having a discussion with a couple of friends about this the other day. You talk about like the Virginia Tech kicking lineage. You went from, him, obviously Joey Sly, but Brian Johnson in there, John Parker Romo, like
JPR, they've all been in the NFL.
Yeah.
They've had a pretty good run here of kickers. And
For a long
those are
time.
not jobs that open up often in the NFL.
Exactly.
got to cherish them while you have them.
Cherish them while you have them. All right. So with that being said, good podcast today. What's coming up on TechSideline.com the next couple of days?
I'll have a weights article later today comparing like the historical weights of Virginia Tech's offensive line compared to this year's offensive line. Talking about the defensive tackle stuff with the weights that I talked about earlier and some other tidbits in there as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sort of going to do a general thoughts type column. It might be tomorrow based on the timing of when we're finishing up this podcast now. I don't know if you guys remember Peter King. You guys might be too young. I know Chris remembers Peter King, but he had a great concept for a column called The 10 Things I Think. And it was like the NFL notes column. I actually used to write this for like our fantasy league. I'd write it every week. Like this is how bored I was when I was in Danville and just like had nothing to
Danville?
do. Yeah.
That was back
Imagine
before they
that.
had a casino.
Imagine
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. They just had Tremaine
Oh my
Edmonds
gosh!
back
If
then.
You would have got no work done.
If
That's
Andy,
true.
Yeah.
if Andy lived there when there was a casino,
Well, it's a great concept for a column, and I'm probably going to try to revive it and steal the idea for this because I think it's just a good way to write generally about what you're thinking about the preseason so far.
Okay. What about you, David?
we got some pretty big podcasts coming up on Thursday. So
Yeah,
I'll be prepping for that.
Nice. I'll let Nick talk about that behind the scenes.
Yeah, we've got 7 videos, including this one, over the next 2 weeks as we prepare for game week. We've got 3 this week, 4 next week, which is just mind-boggling. And this week, tomorrow, or Wednesday, if you're watching this whenever, this is being posted on Tuesday, but on Wednesday we'll have the offensive preview, essentially mirroring this podcast. And then Thursday, we'll have a pretty big guest in Brian White. Second time he's been on the podcast. We had him down there in ACC kickoff, but this time we want to kind of flex our podcast studio a little bit to him and also ask him a little bit more in-depth questions as we get him a little bit longer this time than just the 20 minutes allotted. And then next Monday, we'll kick off the week with Talking with Teal.
He's already making big moves at Virginia Tech. He's fixed the door in the soccer press.
Oh, I heard
press
about
box.
that, yeah.
He's fixing their AC as well. So as Franklin put it, like in his press conference media day, he's like, "There's a lot of low hanging fruit since I got here that we fixed, and you could fix. There were easy fixes and
Stuff that's been.
Is this like a legendary door that has not worked for a long time?
It's the one Berman broke. That one. Yeah.
Oh, nice. I actually did not know that. That's a nice little pull there.
The other day, Doug Bowman tweeted about it, but the Nike contract, like they're opening themselves up 10 days for bids and are looking for another sponsor. So like there's a
Potentially, they could re-sign.
They could re-sign, yeah, but they're just
and
looking
the way
at
the Nike
options.
contract is written, like there's very specific language about renewing. That was always like a sticking point with the previous administration, how they went about that. So I'd be curious getting him on the show on Thursday, asking him about that, because I think it was 10 days, and the 10 days went up to August 24th, which is the day before he speaks at the Board of Visitors meeting.
Right.
Good point.
we got board.
We'll see what he has to say with it now. My guess is he'll be a little bit guarded about it because nothing's finalized, but
I think
interesting
FAU is an
nonetheless.
Adidas school. If I believe
I did, yes, because I looked at that yesterday.
And
it's
the-
curious. It'll be interesting because Nike has been a pretty good partner for Virginia Tech over the years. And I think the coaches and probably players would prefer Nike, but you also have to be paid like you're a reasonable client on that Nike list. And they haven't done that for 10 plus years. So at a certain point, it's just like, it's got to be about the money. Sorry, guys.
yeah.
Well, I looked it up the other day. If you factor in Jordan, which is an affiliate of Nike, 48 of the 68 Power 4 schools are Nike schools. So a large majority are.
It would be something if they like Nike finally got the uniforms right with like the retro modern cool look,
And then next year,
then they move off Nike. Like could Adidas or Under Armour just copy that style? Like it's not trademarked. I can't. imagine.
Yeah,
Like,
I don't know how all that works, but
like
yeah,
Penn State just switched and their uniforms look identical
Penn
to what it
State,
was
South
previously.
Carolina switched. Looks exactly the same way.
and we've got a Board of Visitors meeting next Monday, Tuesday,
And I've got
Tuesday.
continuing position previews as well.
Okay.
So
So a lot of stuff
lot of
happening.
stuff.
it
a lot of good
seems like.
stuff. Yeah, I think the athletics committee is speaking next Tuesday at the exact same time as football practice.
Oh, okay. So you're going to have to divide and conquer.
That seems like poor planning.
Fortunately, we have
It's the only practice
a lot of
availability we have that
employees
week.
here now.
Yeah. 5 full-time staffers. So you'll be good to go. But
We'll figure it out.
all right, for Chris Coleman, David Cunningham, Andy Bitter, Nick Brown, I'm Carter Hill, saying so long from episode 497 of the Tech Sideline Podcast. Have a great rest of your week. We'll talk to you tomorrow for the offensive preview for Virginia Tech football.